you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. I used to believe most people who disappeared in national parks just got lost, disorientated, fell, hypothermia, a misstep that became a tragedy. And that's probably true most of the time, but not this time, because I was there, and my brother didn't fall. He didn't get turned around, he didn't wander off, he was taken by something we couldn't see. It was January 2018. My brother Nate and I had planned one last bonding trip before he moved to South Korea for a teaching job. We grew up hiking. Our dad used to take us camping every year in the Glacier. It was tradition. So we figured one more winter hike, just us, no crowds, no distractions. A 2-night out and back through a stretch called the Logging Lake Trail. It was remote, snowy, but marked and manageable if you knew what you were doing. We knew what we were doing, or at least we thought we did. We started early, heavy packs, snowshoes, radios. Temperature was around 18 Fahrenheit, but we were layered up and energized. The trees were beautiful, blanketed in white, and the silence was peaceful. We hiked for around 7 hours, set up camp a few miles from the lake, cooked over a little stove, and joked about dumb things we've done as kids. Nate brought up how I used to pretend the wind in the trees were whispering spirits. He laughed. I didn't, because that night, lying in the tent, I heard them again. It started faint, like wind pushing through branches, but it had rhythm, a pattern, voices. Too soft to understand, too intentional to be wind. I asked Nate if he heard it. He said, "Don't start with that creepy crap. Not tonight." So I said nothing. We packed up early. I was a little shaken, but I didn't want to ruin the vibe. The trail followed a ridgeline that dropped into a narrow valley. We were maybe 5 miles out when Nate picked up speed, rounding a bend just ahead of me. I was 30 seconds behind him, and when I turned the corner, he was gone. Not out of sight, not ahead. Gone. The trail was clear, no forks, no visible cover, just empty snow and silence. I called out, no answer. I called again, louder, nothing. And then I saw it, about 20 feet off trail, his jacket, folded neatly at the base of a tree, not tossed, not dropped, folded. Next to it, his trekking poles, leaned up right against the trunk. I stood there, frozen. It didn't make sense. I looked for tracks. There were none. Not his, not mine. Just flat snow, like it had been smoothed over. Then I noticed the forest was silent. No birds, no breeze, no rustle. Dead silence. I radioed him. Static. Radioed again. Static. I screamed his name. Nothing. And then, just faintly, a sound from deeper in the trees. A voice. My name. Darren. But it didn't sound right. I ran towards the voice, snow up to my knees, trees clawing at my arms. I followed that sound for nearly a mile, until it stopped, just cut off. Suddenly I was alone, deep off trail. I retraced my path back to the tree, but Nate's jacket, it was gone. No tracks, just disturbed snow where it had been. I lost it. I called in a distress signal, sat there for hours until a search team arrived. They searched for 4 days. Nothing. No scent trail, no signs of animal attack, no sign he ever even existed. Aside from a few photos on my phone and an empty sleeping bag. They told me the cold weather does strange things to the mind. Said he probably fell into the stream, got hypothermia, and wandered. But there was no streams nearby, no holes, no cliff edges, no logical exit point, and no reason he would have folded his jacket. Weeks passed, no update. I flew back to Ohio to be with my family. Funeral with no body. Closet left untouched. a home filled with ghost air. Then, 2 months later, I got a voicemail from Nate's number. It was static at first, then, "Darren, cold but beautiful." Then silence, then something like a gust of wind, but layered beneath it, I swear I heard something breathing. The voicemail was time-stamped at 3:13 AM. I was asleep when it came in, and the number disconnected when I tried to call back. I gave it to the investigators. They couldn't trace it, said it was lightly spoofed, but I knew that voice, that tone, and the background. It sounded exactly like the ridge we camped near that second night. Wind patterns are unique, and that one, that whistling roar between two trees, I'd heard it before, and I'd never told anyone about it. I went back once, a year later, against everyone's advice. I didn't go far, just to the tree where his jacket had been. It wasn't there, of course, but in the bark, I saw something new. Carvings, fresh, not initials, symbols, like a circle broken at one end, spiraling inwards, and below it, cold but beautiful. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But Glacier took my brother, and whatever took him, it wanted me to see where he went, because it didn't leave tracks. It left a door, and I don't think it's closed. If you made it this far, maybe you're not like the others. Hit subscribe and I'll keep the stories coming. I've hiked solo in 24 national parks. I've been face to face with grizzlies in the glacier. I've had lightning strike a tree 10 feet from my tent in Yosemite. I've even been stalked by a cougar for 2 miles in the Olympic. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to what happened in the Smoky Mountains in 2021. They tell you it's one of the most visited national parks in the US. What they don't tell you is how easy it is to disappear in it. I took 5 days off to clear my head. Work had been crushing me and my relationship had just cratered. So I loaded up my pack, drove out from Asheville, and hit the western edge of the park with a rough plan. Backcountry trail, 2 nights out, come back restored. That was the idea. The first day was uneventful. Gorgeous views, crisp air, heavy but peaceful silence. But around midday, I noticed a narrow footpath breaking away from the main trail. No signage, just a faint indent in the underbush, like something or someone had walked through it repeatedly. I paused. It looked old, well worn, deliberate. I told myself I'd only follow it for 20 minutes. Curiosity, that's all. Big mistake. About 15 minutes in, I found it. A carved wooden totem tied to a tree. Not the spiritual kind, more like a warning. It was a face, crudely carved, with no mouth, just deep eye sockets gouged too wide and red twine wrapped tight around its forehead. It was unsettling, but I took a photo and I kept walking. The forest got darker, denser. The air felt still, like it wasn't moving around me. I turned around to head back, and I realized something was wrong. The trail behind me, it was gone. I know how this sounds, like I got turned around and panicked. But I've spent years in the wilderness settings. I know how to mark trails, and I never step off path without noting my bearings. This was different. The trail I followed in was no longer there. Just moss, trees, silence. I stood there for 10 minutes, spinning in slow circles, and then I heard it. A clicking sound. Rhythmic, close. Click, click, pause. Click, click. I turned. No one there. Just a tree, with fresh gouges dug into the bark, and a second totem, and this one had no eyes. I made camp near a stream I found half a mile uphill. I was shaken but still rational. I told myself I must have wandered off a game trail, misjudged the turns. But as night fell, I started hearing footsteps. Not animal, 2-legged. They circled the camp, but never got closer than 30 feet. I called out, nothing. Shone my headlamp, nothing. At 3:47 a.m, I heard whistling. 3 sharp notes, then silence. At first light, I packed up and climbed to higher ground, trying to get GPS signal. Still nothing. No bars, no coordinates. Around noon, I found a tree with carvings spiraling around the trunk. Hundreds of symbols etched like someone had spent days on it. They looked vaguely Appalachian, maybe ancient. I took a photo, but when I turned to leave, I saw something new. A stone circle behind me. It wasn't there a moment before. Inside it, a rotted deer skull. Its antlers were snapped off, and its eye sockets had wooden dolls stuffed in them. I was done. I ran downhill for hours, trying to find the main trail, but the woods just kept getting thicker, and that's when I saw them. It was dusk. I stopped to drink from a stream, and across the water, maybe 40 feet, I saw a shape between the branches. A person. They were crouched, completely still, wearing some kind of a skin, maybe deer hide, and a mask made out of bark. I froze. They didn't move. I took one step back, and that's when I saw the others. 3 more, high in the trees, not climbing, perched, perfectly still, watching. I didn't breathe, I didn't blink, then one of them tilted their head, and I heard the clicking again. I ran. I didn't stop for over a mile. No camp that night, just kept moving, even in the dark. My flashlight caught glimpses of movement ahead and behind, flashes of skin, antler shapes, burlap. I swear, I saw someone crawling on all fours, backwards. Just before sunrise, I stumbled into a clearing. A circle of standing stones, old, maybe centuries. In the centre, a pole with something tied to it. I thought it was a deer at first, but as I got closer, I saw it was a backpack, and attached to the pole was a photo, soaked from the rain. I picked it up. It was a photo of me, taken this morning. I was asleep against a tree. The timestamp showed 4:12 a.m. They'd been right next to me. I dropped the photo and ran. Somewhere along the way I tripped. I fell down an embankment. When I came to, it was mid-afternoon, and for the first time in 2 days, I saw a trail marker. Raw, metal, park issue. I followed it for hours. At dusk, I hit the ranger station. They found me dehydrated, bruised, and babbling about totems and tree people. Back in Asheville, I checked my phone. The camera roll had one new photo I didn't take. A shot of me, asleep, from behind a tree. Same as the printed one, except this one showed a hand reaching towards my neck. I've never gone back. I don't camp anymore, and I don't hike off trail, because there's something in those woods, and it doesn't want you to leave. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But if you ever find a trail with no sign, no footprints, no name, turn around, because you're not the first, and you might not come back. I've been photographing wildlife for over a decade. I've tracked elk through Montana, filmed grizzlies in Alaska, camped for weeks at a time in isolation without a second thought. But after what happened in Olympic National Forest, I haven't stepped foot off the pavement since. I'm not even sure I'm the same person anymore, and if I am, I'm not whole. Something's missing. It was supposed to be a quick job. A regional conservancy group hired me to photograph deer and black bear activity in a remote section of forest near Lake Quinault. They wanted clean shots for brochures, seasonal reports, nothing heavy. I figured a 3-day solo trip, hike out with the gear, snap what I needed, and be home by Monday. I packed light, 1 tent, 2 cameras, infrared trail cam and a satellite phone. The only odd part, The map they gave me had a few sections blacked out. Old ranger trails, they said. Nothing relevant, don't worry about it. The first day was peaceful. It was just the sound of my boots on pine needles, occasional bird song, and that quiet weight you only feel when you're deep enough to be alone. I found a nice clearing with enough sunlight for my solar charger. I set up camp, checked in via satellite message. Everything was fine until I heard a click. Faint, metallic, like a latch turning. I looked around, nothing there. I figured it was a branch, a squirrel, whatever. But that night, I found my trail cam had been moved, not stolen, just turned to face a tree, and the SD card was gone. The second morning, I went further off path looking for elk activity. That's when I saw it. Just off the slope near a dried out creek bed, a square metal hatch, half buried under moss and brush. Old, rusted around the hinges, blended in so well I almost stepped on it. There was no markings, no locks, just a recessed handle. I crouched, brushed it off, and stared at it for a long time. Then, against every instinct I had, I opened it. There was a ladder. It went straight down into darkness. I lowered my phone. Camera flash showed a small chamber, 10, maybe 12 feet deep, concrete walls. It looked abandoned. I thought, bunker, storm shelter, maybe old ranger infrastructure. I climbed down. At the bottom, the air was cold. The walls had scratches, deep ones, like claws or tools dragged against them again and again. There were symbols too, like spirals, lines crossing over each other, some etched, some painted, and a single door, steel, no handle. I reached out to touch it, and then everything went black. I woke up, outside, flat on my back, in the forest. No tent, no bag, no cameras, just my phone, dead. My watch said it was 2 days later. I had a splitting headache and a scar behind my ear I didn't recognise. I stumbled for hours until I reached the service road where I parked. The car was gone. I flagged down a ranger truck near the trailhead. They said they found my campsite abandoned and assumed I'd gotten lost. I spent the next week in hospital being treated for dehydration and mild hypothermia. They ran tests, and the scar looked surgical, but I had no stitches, no signs of recent suturing, just a faint pink line and tenderness. CT scans showed nothing abnormal, but things were off. I'd forget words, I'd reach for objects that weren't there, and I'd draw spirals in the corners of napkins without realising it. Once I was released, I returned to the apartment. Everything seemed untouched, until I checked my desktop. One of my trail cams had auto-uploaded a video to my cloud storage. Only one. It was about 11 seconds long, black and white, night vision. It showed me, standing in the clearing, staring up at the trees, motionless, but something was standing behind me. A tall figure, not fully human, too long in the limbs, wearing something over its face like a mirrored mask. Then the video cut to static. I deleted it immediately, but I still see it in my sleep. 3 weeks later, a man knocked on my door, black suit, grey tie, and smiling. He handed me an envelope and said, "This is for your cooperation. Do not return to the forest." Then he left. Inside the envelope, $10,000 in cash, and a single note. "Your work was useful. The hatch is no longer accessible." I went back once. I don't know why. Stupidity? Maybe. Or obsession. But the forest was different. The slope was there, the trees were the same, but the hatch, gone. No markings, no disturbed ground, just smooth moss as if nothing had ever been beneath it. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But something's still missing. I forget things. I smell earth and static sometimes when I dream, and ever so often, I find a fresh spiral carved into the wall behind my bed.